Today, we're going to think about some lessons the Boston Tea Party can give us, apart from there's a reason Americans prefer coffee to tea. Once upon a time, Sam Adams led the Sons of Liberty. He planned an act of revolution in Boston Harbor in December of 1773. Americans dressed up like Native Americans and threw a ton of tea into Boston Harbor. Here's a thesis for you. The Boston Tea Party was not meant to truly hide the identities of the American colonists who destroyed private property per throwing tea into Boston Harbor. Instead, Sam Adams hoped to provoke a heavy-handed response from the British Crown. This was all about heating up public passions. Clearly, the Sons of Liberty committed a crime meant to provoke the Crown by destroying what would equate to millions of dollars of property damage today. How should the Crown have reacted? When citizens break the law or commit violence, what should the government do? The answer is complicated by a few facts on the ground. People do not like other people breaking laws within a civil society. However, people also do not like overreactions by a powerful state that are levied against even misbehaving citizens. The Sons of Liberty clearly broke the law in the Boston Harbor, but when the British reacted with something the Americans would call the intolerable acts, you should understand this may have been what Sam Adams wanted, as he knew this would provide the powder keg he needed to ignite a giant backlash against the king. Let's think about this in different terms. A teenager's father was fired from a factory one morning. That teenager then went to the factory owner's house in the afternoon, used rocks to break out all the windows in the factory owner's house. From the get-go, other people living in the factory owner's neighborhood would have had different reactions to the teenager's vandalism. You might ask, was the firing of the teenager's father just? And I'd say that's completely up for debate. Some people would say the father was never a good employee. Other people might say the man who fired the father was being unfair because of some personal slight or because he cared more about money than he cared about people. Maybe some people didn't like the teenager's father. After all, he did like to drink a little bit on the job. And maybe they had had their property destroyed in the past, and that had cost them a lot of money, and they really weren't up with the teenager's shenanigans. Of course, there was that lady down the street that the factory owner had also fired, and she thought that the father was a good guy. And clearly, the teenager was just acting as you should do when you're powerless, because what else were his options? Burn it, burn it, burn it, rather than breaking out windows, because maybe burning the house to the ground would have been better. Do you think it would ever be okay for a teenager to recklessly destroy a house because that teenager is angry? The truth is, in the end, if you want to have a stable society, you can't allow the teenager to just go around knocking out windows. It's against the law, and that leads to chaos. But this is the thing. Sam Adams knew that the Sons of Liberty breaking the law would mete out some sort of reaction. He wanted an overreaction. So let's go back to our boy throwing rocks. In the end, the teenager might have to pay for the factory owner's windows. He might have to clean up all the damage. He might have to write an apology letter. He might even have to spend a night or two in jail. I don't know. It depends on how much damage he did, I suppose. Would people in the neighborhood think that any of this was okay, that these punishments were fair? I think so, probably. In fact, I've known a kid or two who broke out a window, and these are the types of things that happened. But let's say the judge who oversaw the penalty for the teenager got very angry and rode his emotional elephant fast and hard in court when trying to think up the appropriate punishment. Let's say the judge decided to lift the teenager up as an example because he thought this particular teenager was more of a troublemaker than most, so he needed to be crushed like a bug under the state's shoe. Instead of following the law, as most people understood the law to be, maybe the judge got really creative and decided, you know what? The proper punishment for throwing rocks is to cut off a person's hand, and maybe cut off the hands of everyone else who approved of this action so they don't get any ideas either. Just hand chopping, hand chopping, hand chopping. Yeah, I'm aware I just went real dark. I'm making a point, okay? I'm making a point. People in the neighborhood who thought the teenager was legit in the wrong might flip out at this and say, whoa! The government did what to him? The Sons of Liberty destroyed private property, and not everyone approved. But the rest of the colonies would eventually end up going, whoa! The Crown did what to Boston? You also shouldn't lose sight of the fact that Sam Adams and his crew were pretty good propagandists. There's a reason that we think about the coercive acts as the intolerable acts, because they wanted you to have a certain image of what the British were doing in your mind. The truth is, when you were in elementary school, you learned about some guys who dressed up and threw some tea in the harbor. But there are so many things that you can actually think about and dissect that are related to the Boston Tea Party. Was it right for the Sons of Liberty to destroy that property? I have heard some people call them terrorists, in fact, and I can't totally argue with those people, even though, America, all that. It would be dishonest to not say that there's some intellectual dissonance for me. I do not approve of everything the Sons of Liberty did, especially not when those guys get into tar and feathering people. Oh no, I am not a fan of mobs. If the British had not come down so hard on Boston, could they have still punished the Sons of Liberty but not stirred up more revolutionary fervor? I don't know. But it seems to me that Sam Adams won the public relations war because we're going to be marching to the American Revolution real soon. Here's another question one might ponder after studying this episode in U.S. history. Which do you prefer, coffee or tea? Be careful, little American. Are you a patriot or something else? See you later.